So just how ignorant are the ignorant masses exactly? Well, that's what I'm going to try to answer for you here. My name's Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, healthrangerreport.com, and this is probably something that you haven't really considered. You think that you, in particular, listening to this, are probably much better informed than most people. And so you know there are the ignorant masses out there who know nothing of how economies work and how government works, and yet they're voters, and they don't understand debt or interest on the debt or anything like that. But you think you are relatively well informed, right? And you are compared to others, and so am I compared to others. And yet, here's the shocker. Each of us is operating, even those of us who believe we are relatively well informed, each of us is operating on nothing more than a tiny fraction of a sliver of the total amount of knowledge that is available to be known. You are running your life, and I am running my life. All of us are running our lives on this tiny little sliver of knowledge, swimming in a vast sea of things that we don't know that are knowable, but we don't know them. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you as a human being, you have a very limited bandwidth of taking in information. Right now, you're taking in this information in an auditory fashion. It's a very slow way, actually, to transfer information. You can read visually and get it a little more quickly, typically. Some people can read more quickly than others. There's also experiential learning. You can get information through touch and other senses and so on. There are a lot of ways to get information, but for the most part, we get information about the world around us by reading, listening, or watching. And watching meaning something like a documentary or perhaps a movie or a film or TV show, what have you. All of these methods, compared to the amount of vast knowledge that is potentially knowable, all of these methods are very, very slow, like slowpoke, turtle, snail. They're so pathetically slow that a human being, even if that person never sleeps their entire life, which is impossible, could still only barely scratch the surface of knowable information, even if they learned every day of their life from the moment they're born to the day they die. Now, you may say, well, of course we know this. That's nothing new. But have you really thought about the fact that today's citizens are making decisions thinking they know what's going on? Think about it. If you talk to someone who disagrees with you on the political spectrum, don't they sound like they know it all? They sound like they know everything, right? And they're confident in their position, they're confident in their votes, and confident in their decisions. And yet, by the way, they are completely or almost completely ignorant of what's really happening in the world. And just how ignorant are they? Well, think about it. We don't know what really happened in history. Most people have no knowledge of history whatsoever. So everything that took place throughout human history, not just thousands of years, but even tens of thousands, but more importantly, the last, let's say, 150 years would be especially important, or in America, 230, 240 years, and so on. But they don't know any of this. All of that doesn't even exist in their minds. All they know is really the present, or the present from the time that they started remembering things as a child. And if they grew up recently, they don't even remember the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal of the 1990s. They don't remember the Reagan administration. They don't remember the Carter administration, the long lines at the gas stations, 18% inflation. And of course, those are things that I remember because I'm old enough to remember that, but I don't personally remember anything from World War II, for example, or the Roaring Twenties, or the late 1800s. I wasn't alive. Each of us, no matter when we're born, has this huge gap of things we can't possibly know because we weren't there. And most of us don't study enough history to have any real knowledge of it. other than just the simple basic things like Thanksgiving is a holiday now. I mean, Columbus Day, that's sort of what people are taught in school these days, is not much history at all. So people are ignorant of history, which means they don't know where modern civilization came from, and they don't understand the battles and the tribulations that took place for things to get to this point, which is why Americans, especially today, they take for granted the ideas of liberty and freedom of speech, the Second Amendment, the Bill of Rights. They take these things for granted because they never lived in the dark ages before that. They never lived under tyranny. They never lived under a dictatorial king and an evil empire regime. And so they are recreating one unknowingly because they don't have the personal memory of suffering under one. So when people vote today, they are voting without the benefit of all the vast human knowledge and experience that came before them, which should have accumulated in the form of wisdom. Wisdom, if it could have been successfully passed down from generation to generation, would be giving our modern day people the vision to see, oh my God, we can't let big government get out of control and take over the rights of the people and crush individual liberty and regulate businesses out of existence and tax and confiscate and coerce. If they had any real wisdom of human history, they would not let that happen. And this is why, by the way, history always repeats itself. Isn't that fun? Because people don't remember what happened before. And so there's nothing new under the sun. You've heard that, right? It's the same mistakes over and over and over again, and they go in cycles. You have a generation of people who fight hard for liberty and freedom. And they raise children who are hard workers and who understand the value of hard work and dedication and getting a return on your investment and so on. And then they have another generation, and their kids are brought up in a more pampered lifestyle. You know, they have from the day they're born, they have more products and more goods and better things laid out for them, sort of rolled out the red carpet for that generation. And then that generation gives birth to another generation of, which is what we're seeing right now, you know, Black Lives Matter, the super pampered, highly offended language police, radical leftist, no skills, no knowledge, no wisdom, nothing, no ethics, no morals, just complete blobs, like human blobs who don't have any view of history. They don't value anything. All they want is their iPhones and their iPods and their privilege and whatever else. And from that then comes collapse. And we've seen this over and over again throughout human history. Collapse comes. And then collapse is the big awakening. And in the collapse, some people typically, die off. Others adapt and wake up, and they come to see the wisdom that has been learned by previous generations, and they come to value, once again, some core principles of hard work and saving money and not being a mindless consumer, and they come to value freedom and liberty because suddenly they have to fight for it again. And then you give birth to a new generation of people who once again build a strong economy and a strong country because they're hard workers. So this cycle continues to repeat itself throughout human history. And isn't it fascinating that there's really nothing that you and I can do to stop this cycle? You can't run around and just educate all the billions of people on the planet and say, hey, stupid people, why haven't you learned from history? Why are you going down the same mistaken path that so many previous generations went down, and they suffered, they paid the price, their civilizations collapsed, and they had to learn the hard way not to go that route? Why can't you learn from that? And the answer is, I guess, because most human beings do not have the brain power that they think they have. They think they're smart, they think they're informed, they think they're rational, but they aren't. They are, in fact, reactive. They are imprinted, they are embedded with their core ideas and beliefs and blind spots before the age of probably 5 or 6. And that never changes. You can't take a 6-year-old that's been raised in a privileged, pampered format and turn them into someone who values hard work, investment, dedication, honesty, and entrepreneurism or innovation. It doesn't work. Once they're imprinted, it's over. So the generation can't be saved. At that point, all you can do is observe and watch and wait for the collapse and hope to raise your own children, if you have them, in a better way that doesn't get them sucked into the victimization of the pathetic generation that's crashing and burning before your very eyes. And when you understand these cycles of human history and you understand just how tiny our actual knowledge is compared to what is knowable in the aggregate, then you understand that human civilization is just barely hanging on. We are barely making it, folks. We're barely getting by. And we are not, in fact, gaining much in the way of real knowledge. All we're doing is we are consuming more, we are excreting more, flushing more toilets, consuming more Prozac and pharmaceuticals, but we're not gaining any real knowledge, any real understanding that would improve the human condition. And so humanity is stuck on a plateau, and to make it even worse, the institutions of government, corporations, and media are deliberately trying to prevent you from becoming informed and knowledgeable, because that is the last thing they want, an informed population, because that's a threat to their system. That's a threat to the status quo. They don't want that to challenge their dominance in those realms. Isn't that fascinating? So what's the answer? Become informed. Challenge everything you think you believe, and teach the next generation how to value real hard work and innovation, dedication, investment. And don't let that next generation become part of, Generation P for pathetic that will self-destruct. So thanks for listening. Mike Adams here for HealthRangerReport.com.